meeting for this triennium. Alrighty, I'll look to Tipa to open us in the karakia.
Tēnā tātai, whakatakata hau ki te uru, whakatakata hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kiuta, kia mā taratara ki tai. I hi ake ana te ātākura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei, mauriora, tēnā koe.
Thank you. All right, move to apologies. Thank you, Councillor Nicol. Do I have a seconder? Yep. All those in favour? Against? Carried. All right, confirmation of the agenda. Thank you, Councillor Nicol. Thank you, Chair Ma. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Any disclosures of interest? If there are none, we will move on. All right, fantastic. Just before we do start, I know that not everyone was present in the previous meeting, where to some extent we discussed the weather events that have impacted our region. So I just wanted to acknowledge the recent weather events, the loss of life and the impact on our critical infrastructure within our region as well. And our thoughts are with our communities and those impacted. We're going to move on to our first item, which is we're very fortunate to have with us Chair Darren Ponter from Greater Wellington Regional Council. And he has got a presentation for us. And I believe, is it Barry, sorry. Barry as well. So welcome, Barry and Darren, and we're in your hands.
Kia ora, Angela. Kia ora koutou. So a while ago, Angela and I had a discussion about what we were doing at the Greater Wellington end. You might know us with our brand name as Metlink in relation to the acquisition of new trains. I made the suggestion that it might be timely for us to give you a presentation so that you can sort of understand the potential intersections between what you're doing and the aspirations that you have to keep your own service and to grow your service between Hamilton and Auckland into the future. I'm not going to dwell on the slides. I'm going to sort of more paraphrase as we go through, just to give you a sense of the journey that we've taken and that you might be able to connect into. Barry is, as the Program Director of Assets and Infrastructure, is the person who's shepherded and guided this project through from its inception and has a lot of previous experience in the acquisition of our fully electric trains. So feel free to ask any questions around the technology or the program process that we've used to get to the point that we have. So first slide, if you don't mind. So we've been on this journey for a little bit under 20 years, if you like. We could see that we had the same type of infrastructure in terms of our carriages that you have. Older English rolling stock from the early 1970s that was going to become end of life later in this decade. That's important to us because those carriages are used to service the Wairarapa trains from Wellington to Masterton. And we could also see, and those same trains also underpin the Capital Connection service from Palmerston North to Wellington. We could see that, if we wanted the Wairarapa line to continue and to grow that line in terms of frequency of trains, we were going to have to make a play to the government for investment of money. And we then saw that that was an opportunity to put a business case together for a more complete solution that included Palmerston North taking over effectively the Kiwi Rail operation at the moment, which is the Capital Connection, and wrapping that into the Metlink service, and like you, going across borders to do that. So as most of you will know, Manawatu is in the Horizons region, with three stations in that region. We spent a lot of time on a detailed business case with a whole series of options for how you could provide for increased frequency through the Wairarapa and the Manawatu. That detailed business case was funded by the government, and so they could see the value in it. They wanted to know more, so they put some money into that endeavour. That resulted in a detailed document in 2021, which we then used as the basis for preparing a budget bid for budget 2022. Unsuccessful the first time round, but successful the second time round in 2023, and so that was done in the last and the current government. So we had commitments under the Labour government for funding, and that the new government doubled down on that. That's may be a little bit unusual for some people in the room, that a more conservative administration has actually leaned into public transport. I suppose my view on that is that we followed a process. The detailed business cases developed to a Treasury standard, with Treasury, NZTA, Ministry of Transport looking in on that and playing a sort of critical role, not only in critiquing the business case, but ultimately standing behind it, which was important in getting that final endorsement in 2023. Following that, we've now been through a process of tendering, resulting in September last year, when we awarded the regional council, that is, takes that whole process under its wing. We awarded that contract to Alstom. It's a build and deliver contract, so it's a little bit more than $1 billion, which buys you 18 5-car sets, simulators. It buys you the operating contract, which I think is for about 30 to 35 years. Next slide, please. So that really gives you a sense of the journey that we've taken to this point. And I suppose the reason for dwelling on that is that we feel, and I think the fact that we've gained government support around this perhaps underlines the fact that we have a solid proposition here, so certainly solid enough for the government to stand behind the majority of the cost of this investment. And I suppose that's one of the reasons for sort of having this discussion with you, is that we feel that with that business case, we've probably done a lot of the lifting, the heavier lifting that would be required to actually make a proposition for new trains in the Waikato-Auckland area, especially if you were going to come on the back of the contract that we already have with Alstom. Just recap: funding approved in 2023, supply contract awarded in late 2025 to Alstom, a French supplier. We're now, so those trains, the road, if you like, has been cleared for the construction of those trains at a facility just outside Ahmedabad in India. And those trains will start to be put together this year, with the first of those arriving for testing, hopefully in 2028, and then a reasonably lengthy period of type testing those trains before the rest of the fleet starts to arrive. So the first fleet of trains will be in service in 2029, and by 2030-31 we will have the full fleet in service across both the Wairarapa lines and the Manawatu line. So let me just unpick all of that a little bit in terms of some of the things that we've had to confront here. When we started this journey, many of you will know that most of our operations are fully electric. They're under a catenary system, just as they are in Auckland, with the trains gathering their power from the overhead lines. That takes the trains to Upper Hutt and to Waikanai. Beyond that is all diesel. And we'd made a sort of preemptive decision, if you like, that just as with our buses, we didn't actually want to buy another diesel train. These pieces of kit are going to last at least 35 years, if not 60 years, given the amount that we sweated the last set of English trains that we had. And looking out that far, we really didn't feel comfortable about buying technology, diesel technology that was still going to be in existence in 60 or 50 or 60 years time. And so hence the very early considerations about going electric and going hybrid electric, and that was a clear specification in our tendering. The door was left open for diesel proposition, but that was never met by any of the tenderers. Some of the tenderers, some of the manufacturers are now only making electric or hybrid electric trains. So we're seeing quite a transition or a shift in terms of what's actually available in the marketplace. We're also not buying that many trains. So it was important for us, in the overall scheme of things, an 18 5-car set train purchase is quite a small number of trains. And so we didn't want a situation where we were buying a fleet of trains for the Wairarapa service, which might have been diesel or diesel and electric, and then buying a different set of trains to do the Manawatu line. They needed to be one fleet. We've really benefited from having a single fleet to date in the Wellington metro area, and we can see the future benefits of doing that with this new set of trains. Initially, the pushback that we sort of got, maybe a little bit from KiwiRail, I suppose people within the industry who really worried about whether hybrid had developed sufficiently at that point to be a viable proposition in New Zealand, was that idea that we should actually be extending the catenary system, that we should be dragging out the electric lines through the Wairarapa and bridging the gap and dealing with the different electricity supply between the main trunk and what we have in Wellington, which is a 1500 DC system. The cost of doing that was just going to be prohibitive. I think somewhere like $300 million just to string out wires through the Wairarapa when you're only serving a population of 50,000 people. That just couldn't be justified. We couldn't find a way to do that, not too dissimilar on the Manawatu line either. And as a consequence, hybrid technology came into its own. So just to talk through that, these trains are fully hybrid. That means that they will run on the electric wires to Upper Hutt and to Waikanai. They will then drop the wires and they will run on a battery system between Waikanai and Palmerston North and between Upper Hutt and Masterton. At those two ends, they will then be plugged in and receive a boost in order that they can get back onto into the lines, the main electrical lines that we've got at Upper Hutt and Waikanai. So quite a simple operation in the overall scheme of things. No additional wires required, some additional charging facilities required at both ends. One thing I should say here is that we made the decision to locate the stabling and the maintenance facility in Masterton. So these trains will be treated differently from the existing fleet that we have. The existing fleet will continue to be maintained at a depot in Thorndon in Wellington, and this new fleet of trains will be maintained in Masterton. You can see on the screen there the sort of various pieces of work that are being done. At the top is the rolling stock. I've explained that. Below that is the depot. The contract for that is about to be awarded, and then there's a series of station improvements and other line improvements, passing loops, for example, station heights, station platform lengthening, etc., that has to take place on a number of the stations in the network, particularly in the Manawatu area where we have 4 stations that are not currently part of the Metlink network, and they, for example, have different platform heights and what have you. So they all need to be brought to a Metlink standard, if you like, so that we can get easy egress onto the trains. Next slide, please. So that's just to give you a sense of what we're talking about in relation to funding for the trains. In our case, the government share of this is around about 90%. So it's to you in the room, to us in this room, that's the 90% FAR rate. That's for the CapEx. That's a similar rate that we got for the last set of trains that we purchased, and underscores, I suppose, the importance that train as a mode of travel is in the lower North Island. We were able to make a compelling case to the government on that. I'm sure that they would have liked to have driven us down to 51%, which is our standard FAR rate. But we felt confident that we had a proposition that they were not going to be able to avoid, and that turns out to be the case. The ongoing operational costs, on the other hand, are at the 51% rate. So into the future, running these trains on a day-to-day, year-by-year basis is no different to us than the rest of our operations. We have to find the other 49% for the operation of the train. So just because we've got them at 90% doesn't mean that we don't have our eyes open to the additional costs that we are likely to end up facing as a consequence of running this larger extended network and more frequent trains on the network. Last 2 slides, please, and the next one. So I'll get Barry to just lean into this slide around the international supply chain. Barry.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, I guess just indicating that this is a global project. We've signed the contract with Alstom New Zealand, but really the main driver from Alstom is coming from Australia from a project management perspective. But the key deliverables are being led out of India with the design team in India and the main manufacturing facility in India as well. But the supply chain is global, with sub-suppliers coming from all over the world, Europe, China, etc., to bring in to assemble that train in India. And then the trains will be shipped to New Zealand for testing.
Right, next slide. These are the last 2 slides, sorry.
Yeah, so with, do you want me to cover this?
Yeah, cover this and I'll do the last one.
So yeah, within our contract, we foresaw, I guess, the opportunity that we were trying to create a train that could be used elsewhere within New Zealand. So as part of the tender, we were asking the tenderers to demonstrate how they could adapt the train that they were offering for Wellington to be used elsewhere around New Zealand. Alstom did do that. Also, there's clauses within the contract that require Alstom to negotiate in good faith with other public transport authorities around New Zealand. So yeah, you have the ability to skip the procurement process and negotiate directly with Alstom to purchase some trains to run from Auckland to Hamilton or even over to Tauranga. I have had Alstom give very indicative non-binding prices for 8 trains. I guess similar to the issues that we had, the smaller the order size, the less attractive it becomes both for Alstom and also yourselves in terms of the cost to do that original design work and non-recurring costs. So I guess from Alstom's perspective, ideally order size should be larger than 8 units. And if you include a maintenance offering as part of that contract, then it becomes a lot more attractive for them to be discussing with you and sharpening their pencil ultimately. Next slide.
Just before you do, Barry, can you just indicate to the room what the window is that, for example, if the Waikato Regional Council decided that they wanted to take up the opportunity to extend the order that we have by adding an extra 8 or 10 units and what have you, what is the period within which they would need to make that expression known and concluded those discussions with Alstom?
So I think it's really a cost question. I think if you confirm that sooner rather than later, that enables Alstom to do any of the design changes necessary and essentially have continuous production on the end of our train order, which is due for finishing in 2030. So yeah, I think when you consider the design period and etc., really you need to be getting the funding and decision probably almost this year, almost. But on the flip side, we also have within our contract the ability to go to Alstom and ask for them to manufacture just suburban electric trains for us to use within our metro. That option is available to us and right through until 2033. So yeah, I guess it's going to be a question as to the longer you leave it, then it probably is going to cost a little bit more to have a break in production. But yeah, I'm well aware that decision making takes time, and it's ultimately going to be the price for taking time is that slight increased cost due to the break in production.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, we appreciate you coming along today. We'll just have a few questions.
There was one more slide.
One more?
Yeah. So yeah, I guess this just tries to highlight the trains that we are getting for Wellington are designed for use in Wellington, and there is some variances across the Wellington versus Auckland network. The key differences being the overhead wires. In Wellington, we've got a 1500 volt DC system, and Auckland and Hamilton have a 25 kV AC system, which does require more electrical equipment to be put on board the train, which can affect the weight distribution and the whole packaging of the train. So there is quite a lot of work involved in doing that. Equally, the platform heights are different between the two cities. It is only 70 millimeters difference, but when you're trying to get the best accessibility experience you can when people getting on and off a train, that does matter. Obviously, also duty cycle and battery capacity calculations will need to be confirmed. And I guess the more you change, the more cost it's going to be in terms of design time, as well as testing and validation of those changes.
Thanks for that, Barry. Well, I'll just stop you there.
Yep.
I think one of the key differences probably between where you guys are at your journey and where we're at our journey is we're still waiting for the Te Huia to be in the continuous program. But I think it's really important that we understand where you guys are at and where we might get to at some stage. So this was more of an idea of what might be coming down the line, given decisions that need to be made before we get into rolling stock decisions. So yeah, it's great to have that information. But I was just wondering, Darren, if you could just give us a little bit of information about the capital connection, so Wellington and Horizons, and the relationship between those two regional councils per se,
Sure.
and how that sort of relates to our context here in the Waikato, moving people into Auckland and back again.
Yeah. So, yeah, good question. So, Capital Connection, as some of you will be aware, is a one service each day, weekdays only. There's no weekend service. It leaves early in the morning from Palmerston North and goes back again about 5 o'clock, 4:30ish from Wellington. If you're not on that train, you're not on that train. There has been a lengthy fight over many years to retain the service. Quite a number of attempts to cut the service retention has been led at a political level, but also with a groundswell of community support. We have that. We have assurances around the Capital Connection now, and that's sort of really been bolted down by the fact that the government has stood behind the business case and then the funding for the new train. So Capital Connection will stay until the new trains arrive. What will change is that it will be Metlink all the way to Palmerston North in the future. So that's an easy conversation that we had with the Horizons Regional Council. They are paying a share. They're paying a share of these of the cost of the new trains and the operational costs going forward. But at this stage, we're not. We have a positive relationship with the Horizons. They are, I suppose, they see us as being the experienced operator and what have you. Not sure they would say it quite like this, but I think they're quite satisfied coming in on our coattails. We do all of the heavy lifting on this sort of stuff, but everything is cleared through the Horizons Regional Council.
Okay, thank you. So basically, in our context, you're like Auckland Transport. So you run the trains, you buy the trains, and you're servicing.
I want to tell you to just wash your mouth out with soap there, Angela. But yes, in many respects, we are.
Okay, no, that's fine. Thank you. I've just got a couple more questions. First up, we have Ben, and then our chair, Warren.
Yes, Darren, these are political questions. They're there for you.
Yeah.
90% FAR rate for capital costs.
Yes.
What are the chances that current governments will actually extend that figure, or will they aim for 51%?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I can answer that. I suppose we got that figure because that's we started with that figure, let me put it that way, because that is what our Matangi trains had been funded at. Now, times have changed. We're in a more austere environment. I suppose I was anticipating that the government would try and sink a lid on us, that, you know, we might end up into a negotiation that would get us maybe closer to 70%, etc. That never really happened. There were intimations that that was going to happen, but it never really happened. So I do feel fortuitous that we are only coughing up really the 10% side of the ledger, but equally mindful of the fact that if you even with that generosity from the government, you still end up having to bite down on the 51% OPEX costs going forward, and that's not insubstantial year in, year out. Chances of in the current environment, chances of a FAR rate of 90% being granted, I would have thought would be slim for us as much as they would be for you going forward. I think that the government would be looking for its pound of flesh out of us as regional councils.
That's fine. Secondly, your trains commence in 2029.
Yep.
However, the government has indicated no regional council elections after 2028. So presumably the regional council in that area may disappear as well as the same thing we're facing here. How do you see that playing out in terms of future of train services? And do you see some kind of national merger or merger between regions or government taking greater control?
Yeah, good question. So not letting that whole issue consume us in this area at the moment. Very much focused on getting the trains into the two regions. Going forward, I suppose what we can see in this region is the need for an Auckland Transport or Auckland Transport equivalent. So that could extend beyond the boundaries of certainly the Wellington Regional Council. It could be something that extends even halfway up the North Island to capture the bus, the train, and the ferry services that we collectively provide. Maybe, you know, take a line, but in a line from New Plymouth through to Hastings Napier. I can certainly see that as a possibility. Whichever way we go as a region, whether it's through our own actions, which we are moving on for local government reform anyway in this region, probably before anything from the government, we would need an Auckland Transport equivalent, especially if we're going to end up with 2 or 3 unitaries in the region.
Thank you, Ben. Chair Warren.
Yeah, good afternoon, Darren. I've had a look at your Manawatu to Wellington service and just trying to look at what we have currently operating. Obviously, your one trip a day. It looked to me like roughly 200 to 300 passengers, etc. An adult fare of $98 without any concessions. So I'm just looking at how much across between Greater Wellington and Horizons do you actually subsidise the current service per year? And then my second question would be around your business case, how much did future potential growth feature in that business case?
So that some of that might fall to Barry to answer, but I think from memory we are subsidising something less than $250,000 a year to the Capital Connection. So the government did put the clamps on us a while ago, basically said, look, if you truly want to stand behind the Capital Connection, then you've got to inject some funds into it yourself. Part of keeping the service alive is it rests on us actually putting a reasonably nominal amount into that service. Barry, are you able to answer the wider patronage figures?
Yeah, totally. Growth is a key part of the business case. Ultimately, mode shift of people out of cars and onto rail is a key basis behind the whole benefit proposition that this program is going to deliver. Can I give you the numbers off the top of my head? No, sorry, I can't. But yeah, totally.
That's all right, Barry. I don't really need to dig into the detail. It was just sort of how much weighting was given to potential growth of the service in a business case.
Yeah, I guess ultimately we're basically doubling the amount of services and trains that we're providing on both corridors. And so, yeah, that is looking to the future around population growth and mode shift. There's nothing worse than buying new trains and having them full within a few years. You have to trade off between looking to the future and but yeah, I think modelling has the potential that we are basically at capacity about halfway through their life. So that's part of the trade-off.
Thank you, gentlemen.
I think one of the things I would observe here is that the corridor between Otaki, Levin, going up to Palmerston North is growing quite significantly. But what I would venture is, while it's significant for our region, it probably pales in comparison to the growth that you're experiencing or going to experience between Hamilton and Pukekohe. I reckon you're going to have a much bigger population uplift in that corridor than we're even going to experience in this corridor over the next 30 years.
Thank you. I've got Chris Hughes next.
Yeah, just a point of clarification. Thanks, Darren. Warren actually asked the question. I just want a point of clarification on your answer. Is it 250K subsidy per annum total from the operators?
I'll come back to you with the exact figures and the difference between what we pay and what Horizons Regional Council pays. So then,
total contribution.
Then you can be absolutely clear. I'll get that to Angela this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Darren. Just two more questions, Keith and then Jennifer.
Yeah, thanks, guys, for the presentation. And I'm just curious because we a lot of our thinking is thinking only between Hamilton and Auckland, but to service our wider region, the electrification is going to be a major. So in terms of your rolling stock, do Austins provide the equivalent of diesel or electric, a bit like the tugs up in Auckland, which are battery operated but topped up by a diesel motor? It's just in terms of, because rolling stock's peculiar to New Zealand and all the track woods and all that sort of thing, and it'd be good to tap in behind you, but also to give us the opportunity to go further afield than where we are at the moment.
Yeah, so Alstom is one of those manufacturers that is largely putting all of their eggs in the electric basket. So they don't generally provide diesel trains. I have heard though that they are looking at providing a tri-mode type train that does have a diesel generator that to top up batteries. But I guess all through our bid process, pretty much all of the manufacturers were telling us by having both diesel generators to top up batteries and batteries just ultimately increases your maintenance and capex costs because you've just got a little bit more equipment on board that ultimately needs to be maintained, etc. So it's not necessarily a cheap option to go down that road. So keeping it to purely battery is probably a preference.
When we started, the number of kilometres from a battery charge was about 80 kilometres. When we finally fit the batteries into the trains, we're anticipating that it will be much further than that. How much further, we don't know. But as you'll all know, battery tech is improving year in, year out. So we're expecting that we'll get a longer distance out of the trains.
Thank you. Jennifer.
Thank you, and hi, Darren. I was wondering, with Auckland being the largest city in Wellington capital, does your regional land transport plan and your vision and analysis through the business case have anything in there about connecting between Wellington and Auckland? So at this point, I'm asking because obviously Te Hui is doing that bit between Hamilton and Auckland. So connecting the capital connection to Hamilton, for example.
No, it doesn't, and possibly the same reason that yours may not, and that is that we end up being quite myopic and focusing on our regions because that is what the law requires of us effectively. But we have had a number of conversations. I certainly have with communities that are interested in that intercity travel and whether this type of train actually might meet those requirements. Now, ostensibly, there's no reason why they couldn't, because from Palmerston North to Hamilton, you're running on the 25 kV line. You now need 2 modes of electricity current to be provided for in the trains, but that is also quite standard in Europe. As long as somebody's willing to pay for that, then that can be fitted into these new units. So they do have the prospect of being considered for that, but we haven't. While we've been part of those conversations about intercity travel, we haven't explicitly provided for it in this contract.
Thank you. Yeah, the national conversation to rail, isn't it? Thanks.
Thank you. Got Gary R. and then Ben, and then we'll close off.
I was just interested in the OPEX number 2 and in the level of subsidy that you provide, and that's 250k. In your business case, did that go beyond the new train purchase? And when you looked at your operating cost, did that include depreciation? I'm very curious to know what that is, because on your numbers, if you're doing, what was it? I think it was 350 people a day, and even at a 5% depreciation rate, you're looking at thousands of dollars per ticket just on depreciation.
Yeah.
So I guess the 250,000 that Darren's referring to is the current capital connection operation, which I guess is a very different proposition to what we'll be looking at with these new trains. The yearly cost that we'll be paying for the new trains is substantially more than 250,000. Is depreciation counted? No, I don't think it is. Really, we account for that through the whole of life loan mechanisms that we've got within the cost structure. So essentially, you're paying them off through the life of the train.
Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, just very briefly, later on today, we're due to discuss electric buses, and I just wondered, have you had experience with the electric bus fleet? And if so, did the government give you a substantial grant or subsidy, which doesn't seem to be available anymore?
Yes, we do. I think we at about 25% of our fleet is now electric. That includes double-decker electric buses and electric omnibuses. There were a few grants in the early years from ECA, Energy Conservation Authority, but they were really about transitioning buses from being diesel to being electric. So one of our transport operators here in the Wellington region, Transit, took 2 diesel buses and were paid by ECA to actually work through how much it would cost, what it would take to actually fit them out as electric buses. Those buses now run on our routes, but that is the only sort of bespoke funding that I can think of that we got at that time. Otherwise, it's normal FAR rate that we're paying for things. Yes, we were an early mover on electric buses. Yes, we paid a bit of a premium for doing that, but I don't regret. I don't regret that at all. They've served us really well. Maintenance is brilliant on them, and they're absolutely wonderful for Wellington Hill routes in particular.
Excellent. Thank you, Darren and Barry, for your time today. Yeah, we appreciate your insights and answering our questions.
Cool.
And I will circulate that information if you can get it to me at some stage. Thanks, Darren.
Cheers. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Right.
Thanks. Bye.
Alrighty. Can I have a mover to receive the report? Thank you, Noel. And a seconder. Thanks, Jen. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Alrighty, we move on to the director's report. So I will hand over to our director, Phil.
Thank you. And you have previously met Lorraine, who is acting manager, transport strategy and delivery in the context of our structure, having undertaken a review at the end of last year. So Lorraine's going to take you through the report, but others will jump in to respond to questions as required. In the room, we have Trudy Knight, who's our manager of public transport, Sandra Sesto-Dechik, who is our team leader of customer focus, Vincent Quao, who's our team leader for contracts and insights, and Catherine Simpson, who's a new team leader in transport planning within the transport strategy and delivery section. We're completing recruitment on our final team leader, which is portfolio and delivery now, and hope to be able to introduce you to that person in the next meeting. But over to Lorraine to take you through the report.
Is that working? Yeah, thank you. So largely going to take the report as read. It just sets out the current operating environment that we're working in, which you've had a lot of exposure to through other committees in terms of the local government and resource management law reform. We would say that from an officer's point of view, the reform that's as it's been presented in the proposals is probably light in the connections to the Land Transport Management Act, and therefore some of the implications for remit for this committee and this council in the transport space.
Lorraine, can I just get you to pull your microphone just a little bit closer? Yep, thank you.
And associated with that is obviously the establishment of the new ministry, which will probably provide some more mention of some of those things that we've thought missing or not clear, lack clarity in the reform and the proposal. Noting that the second emission reduction plan was released, and it doesn't have a lot again for transport in terms of new funding, a continuation of the existing funding and initiatives already funded through the NLTF and the NLTP. There's some guidance on harm reduction for PT that for public transport that NZTA is working on. Staff at Regional Council were involved in the preparation of that, and they're just seeking some feedback before finalising those as guidelines. And with that comes a new mechanism for councils to produce regional safety improvement plans for public transport, and with that there is the carrot of potentially more funding for those initiatives at an enhanced VAR rate. And some other consultation on speed reduction that may be affecting communities in your area, mostly intersection speed limits, and then NZTA has indicated that it'll be looking at some potential speed reductions state highways through communities. And then there's an update on some current work streams that don't have papers of their own, but just to keep you reassured that the work is going on in the background, and probably best to take any questions on those.
Thank you, Lorraine. We'll start off with Ben.
Oh, sorry, very two simple ones. In the Resource Management Act reform, you note at the bottom here that the Regional Sector Transport Special Interest Group may make a submission on the planning bill. Transport issues didn't particularly come up in our regional council submission, from what I can remember. Did they make a special submission? And be interested to know what it was, if you did.
The answer to that is no. In the end, I think the decision was made to not do that. But their guidance from that work fed into to Urukahika's submission, I believe. But I don't think it featured particularly strongly.
That's fine. And just about the $100,000 for the safety. So basically, council would need to come up with 25,000 in order to get 100,000 maximum. And when does the decision on that have to be made?
That's correct in terms of coming up with the 25%. It's not clear when the decision needs to be made. We need to indicate our intention at NZTA to proceed with sharing a regional safety improvement plan, actually by the end of this month. But that doesn't sort of actually say that we need to do it or set a date for when we need to do that.
Okay, so it won't be part of annual plan discussions then. So if it has to be by the end of this month, when will that surface?
So there was a workshop last week with the agency who were talking about an expression of interest in commencing development of a safety plan, and the projects that could arise from that safety plan could be delivered over many future years. If we were to approach the agency and say we're interested in developing one of these plans, we wouldn't be ready to spend any of that money next financial year. It would be into the LTP rather than the annual plan process.
So just to clarify then, that would come through the NLTF, RLTP conversations? Okay, thank you. Chair Warren.
Thank you. Community transport grants, have they opened now? I see it just stated the second week in February, so I just wasn't sure, and I hadn't seen anything come out publicly.
Yes, they are open now.
They are open now.
Yep.
Okay.
I think we've actually received 3 requests to date.
So they're open. Okay, no, that was all.
Okay. If we wanted to share that information with our communities, is there some sort of link that you could get to us, or?
And our comms team about something on social media?
Yes.
We can
Okay.
share that.
That would be handy, thank you. Sipa.
Thank you through the chair. On community transport grants, feedback from the Taumaranui community is their current arrangements mean they sit in a cold bus between Taumaranui and the hospital and return. I've had mixed feedback from Phil and others that say we're responsible for part of that, but not heating the bus. They're just asking, can we get a whole solution? Because they're putting patients at risk. Thank you.
So maybe just to expand on that topic slightly. So the service that runs between Taumaranui and Hamilton is a health shuttle. It is run and funded by the health service. And we have over time worked with the health system to add in a couple of extra stops and a ticketing machine so that that service can provide something to members of the public along that route. But we don't hold the contract, we don't set the standard, we don't pay the bill. So the question is around the quality of a public transport service. At this stage, they have been going through a process of considering the future of that service, and it appears that they will be focusing that on being just a health shuttle. So it may not have public access in the medium and longer term. The conversation about whether the regional council should contract a bus from Taumaranui or from the south of our region to Hamilton is a wider discussion that's part of our regional public transport plan. If it were to become a public service, it would need to align with the requirements for urban bus standards, the RUB standards, and that would mean it would have to have ultra low floor. It would have to have standards on board. So what's being run at the moment is not a public transport service as such. It's a health shuttle which has public access randomly.
So if a group wanted to either invest in a solution and or work with them, it's not us. Who do they go and work with?
Te Whatuura.
No, we've been to Te Whatuura, they sent us back to you. So I'm bouncing between Te Whatuura and Regional Council because your accountability doesn't reach the road and theirs doesn't either, and the patients are freezing in the meantime. Could I get a meeting with somebody? I'll get Whatuura in the room.
Yeah, absolutely. And you and I were exchanging emails on this the other day.
But that's what I mean. I've got 4 months worth of emails between 2 agencies, and neither of them are owning a solution. So, tērā tōku e whānau.
Yeah.
Thank you, Phil.
And Jen.
All right. On the community transport piece, I imagine that once the funding round is closed, it'll come to us more wholesome way. I'm quite keen for our committee to get a bit of a really good understanding of how it currently works and get a bit of a vision going on what it is going to be. And so my main question is, because obviously it's gone from fledgling to slightly bigger, when does the policy get reviewed? When is our part in that?
So that was raised at the previous meetings, and it's on the attachment to this report. So the intention is we'll bring a report on the policy frame setting for the next committee meeting.
Awesome.
It's just a matter of needing to get these applications out to service some of those community transport providers, and get through the work that's involved with this. But set ourselves up for the next funding round, be working through the review of the policy.
Sounds good, thanks, because I'm aware there's quite a lot of things that we could consider and go with it. And one other thing I was just going to mention is whether there would be any extra cost or any other barriers if we had multiple funding rounds in a year rather than just, or whether we could set the time of year to be quite consistent, because it's kind of understanding over the years, and it's obviously these community organisations are working to their own financial years, and so they need to be able as well.
All of those, I think, is a yes. This has grown so fast and so quickly that we've needed to work in the way we have, but we know that we need to be understanding all of those factors as we go. So that's what all of that conversation.
Meeting together. Awesome. Great, thank you. I'll bring up the rest in the later parts of the meeting.
Thanks, Jen. Liz.
Actually, my query just follows Jen's. So did I hear it correctly that the review for that community transport fund is about to start? So we will have influence over being able to change some of the policy direction in there?
Yes.
That's what, okay, I just want to be clear. I mean, I understand for the next meeting it's going to be on the agenda, but we'll have the ability to change some of the policy.
Yes. So as Phil mentioned, it's grown quickly, and we've also did quite a comprehensive piece of work last year to set up for the review in terms of the Waikato offering is quite unique. So just looking at how it relates to the existing legislation and to other providers. And so we will get through this round of funding and then bring that to you to take on board for how we want to administer the funding and what policies we want to implement in future.
Yeah, and that will be the reporting as well, then. The reporting required from those who have received the funding. There's the ability to influence change around that.
Yeah. So we've reported those successful candidates annually via the Regional Transport Committee previously, and obviously with us now having a Transport Committee for the Regional Council, it would be coming here.
All right, now that sounds good. And just a couple of other things. The national ticketing solutions, that's been so overdue. Oh my goodness, it's time. It's time we have something, national here where we can go to any other part of the country and have a card or have a way to get on a bus. So I'm very interested to see that moving at pace. That's really important. And just lastly, the Cambridge connection. So Phil, really appreciate your support with that. Obviously, that's a long standing thing, and I think you put a note in here actually that there's strong interest, public transport interest in this, and there is for sure. It's been a bit of a quite an effort to date. So really appreciate the work that this council is putting into that.
Maybe just a comment on that, which is that the consultation for phase 2 of YPAR's work is live currently to the 9th of March, as it says here, but there is an online page where all of that feedback is going on live and people are then commenting and voting on it. So you can see in a day-to-day changing environment what people are talking about in that consultation, and public transport's coming up all the time, well ahead of any of this information going out related to the work we've been doing. So it's interesting that there is very strong interest in that community for public transport solutions.
So the report that you're doing is well, Phil, around the Cambridge work. I think it's in its second phase now. When will it come to this committee?
I might ask Catherine to respond to that.
Thanks. Good morning, good afternoon. I could probably bring at least a draft report to the next committee. Yeah, we're well into the second stage now, so we should be wrapping the work up within the next month or two. So optimistically, I could bring a report to the next committee. If it's not ready, I may defer to the following committee, but indicatively it should be available.
Excellent. Noel.
I might have my wires crossed, but did I hear correctly that we're going to do this funding application round now, and then we're going to review the policy?
Yeah, it's what we're about 3rd or 4th year of this
But-
funding, and
yeah.
we have reviewed the policy, but it has grown substantially. So,
So we're going ahead and doing a funding round, and then waiting after that to do the policy review. Why aren't we doing the policy
Usually-
review beforehand?
usually the funding round would have been end of last year. However, it was delayed. So,
I just find that
okay. Any further questions? Nope. Okay. We will receive the report. Do I have a mover? Thanks, Gary. And a seconder? Thanks, Liz. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Right, the next one is the Regional Land Transport Plan. Happy for you to take this as read and maybe give us the highlights.
Yes, sure. Good afternoon, Chair and councillors. Yeah, I'll take the report as read, but as a high-level summary, this report is really just outlining the high-level project plan for the RLTP review. We are in the early stages of developing the plan. The final RLTP is due to NZTA early August next year. So it is essentially almost a 2-year project, which we are in the beginning phases of, and the report's intention is to really outline your roles and responsibilities, I guess, in the process. Essentially, the main priorities really lie with the RTC. Under the LTMA, we developed the RLTP with the RTC committee. That's who we workshop with, but we will be bringing key updates through to yourselves as the final committee who really, as the council, endorse the RLTP plan. Happy to take questions.
Oh, Chair Warren.
Thank you. Just a question around the 110,000 that is contract services. What do we contract out? This budget, page 30 of our report.
That could be for any technical work we may need support with, and evidence, getting the evidence base for and the technical foundations to support the report. So this budget, yeah, these budgets would have been defined by the last NLTP round, would it have been? Not really a follow through from that.
Yes, that's what they'd be.
Yeah.
The cost will be based on the production of the last RLTP. It will cover, as Catherine mentioned, evidence and technical reports as required. There's also amount of production of the document at the end, because we do a full consultation draft and a final version.
And the management costs at 879K. I take it that's our staff and part of all that pulling it all together. did have. I'll leave it there.
Right, any other questions? All right, we've got a mover and Councillor Nicol. Seconder, thank you, Ben. All those in favour? Aye, against, carried. All right, onto the bus contract renewal.
Just by way of introduction to this paper, you'll recall through the briefing discussions that we had in early December that we were moving on from the decisions that Council had made in August, and at that time we were in the process of working on pre-engagement with potential suppliers, and we also made a commitment that we would bring the Section 17A work to you. So all of that is contained within the very large attachments into this report, but this report is intended to take you through the several of the 6 projects that are underway within this programme. So over to the team to take you through that as you wish.
Thanks, Trudy. Are you able just to introduce people that some people might not have met before?
Sure.
Thank you.
Right. Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. First of all, I'd just like to introduce my colleagues to my left here. Actually, just to reiterate, as Phil had, so Catherine Simpson, who has been covering all of the planning work that's led into shaping up this renewals program. Lorraine overseeing most recently moving into that procurement phase of this contract renewals program, and last but not least, Vincent Kuo, who is leading the procurement process with the oversight of myself and other support. So we find ourselves here today with the purpose, first of all, to take the report as read, but a few points to note. The report does provide the bus contract renewals program and includes for the first time the Local Government Act 17A review. The bus contracts needing renewal, just to reiterate, cover Hamilton, North Waikato, Raglan, Eastern Waikato, which includes Thames Coromandel and Haraki areas. Look, the past 2 years has confirmed the scope of the services to be procured, and this scope was approved by Council last August. But since then, as mentioned, the focus has now shifted to the procurement phase. But it is important to note, whilst the go-live dates for these new contracts are a while away, November 27 for the regional services, July 28 for Hamilton, time is needed for that successful mobilisation, which typically speaking is around 12 to 18 months, dependent on the scale of what's being rolled out. So therefore, sort of working back, these contracts need to be awarded later this year to enable us to support those timelines. But that said, timelines are tight, as we are in the new traineum and have just completed the pre-procurement market exercise. This has helped us to check in on the existing objectives that have been set and ensuring whether they still hold true in terms of the contract renewals program, but also importantly ensuring that they align to elected member expectations. So today, this report is seeking confirmation and approval from the committee of the refined objectives sought through the renewal of the upcoming bus contracts. So I'd like to open the floor to feedback and welcome any questions of myself and my colleagues here. Thank you.
Oh, Thanks, Trudy. All right, Noel.
Thank you. Those of us, sorry, I didn't circulate staff, but we had a interesting email come in from our friends in Raglan, and I circulated that around. And I hope, Phil, you indicated you may have some answers. I don't know whether that's you or through your team, but certainly the Raglan community would like to see those questions answered if we can, and why not?
So we can quickly answer that one. The report that came to you in August included all of the feedback from the community consultation. There was an action from that meeting that consultation feedback would all be published on our website, which occurred in September, but all of that had been considered. The report in August actually included a section on consideration of all of the feedback from Raglan, and actually had changed the staff recommendation to terminate services at the Transport Centre to continue with services running into Hamilton East, certainly in the short and potentially into the medium term, as an acknowledgement of what the community had said. So our view was that feedback had been heard and it had resulted in a change that was supported by Council in August.
Certainly during the election campaign, the Raglan people gave us certain feedback that they weren't entirely happy, but they appreciated the fact that it had been extended. So that's a credit to the council of the day listening to their concerns. Is there any opportunity for further input from the community, or the reality is it's stopped and we now move on?
I can provide some comment on that. Particularly for our medium to long-term networks, where we have additional funding to do service enhancements and improvements. At those points, we will largely consult again with the communities. For example, in the medium term, a local service is identified for Raglan area. We did get some feedback during consultation suggesting changes to the proposed routings and changes to the timings and things like that. We would definitely consult on that closer to the time once funding is confirmed. So yes, there's definitely opportunities over the life of the bus contracts for further engagement and input to make changes to services, yes, particularly if there's service enhancements, yeah.
So thank you, and appreciate the opportunity to raise those issues from the Raglan community. Thank you.
Thanks, Noel, for raising that. Chris.
Thanks, Chair Angela. I'm not sure who I should be directing this to, but I'll ask anyway. The Section 17 review's been done, which seems to focus very much on the process of setting the contracts, how we go about the contract letting process. And it's done quite a good analysis on that, given us the options and that. And I accept that there was public consultation effort made August, September last year. And the feedback I had, and I looked at it myself, it was extremely shallow. The questions were not at all, they were predetermined questions, seeking a predetermined answer, which is not the way we should be going about reviewing. I don't believe reviewing a transport operation, particularly given that we've got one opportunity now to look at an operator to provide a service to us. Now, and what it doesn't address, which has been my question, which I've been asking for some time, is the service that we're currently offering actually meeting the demands of the potential customers? You know, we're running these big buses around the place, very few people on them apart from certain times of the day, but it doesn't seem to be meeting the demands of the people. You talk to the people and they want something different. They want to have more of a door-to-door service rather than having to walk half a K or 800 metres to the bus stop. This report, the 17A report, does not appear to address those issues. And I'm asking the question of when are we actually going to do that work? Go and talk to our customers. Putting something online, asking them to fill it in a form, is not actually talking to the people. You'll get a certain number of people doing it, and when you ask questions which are preconditioning the answers, I don't believe that's an adequate way of structuring a framework for the future of our transport system in the region, particularly in the city. Different, I know, Noel's, you know, his constituents and Robbie's are different. They've got different needs. But we're the ones that sit and watch these big buses, and 80% of the money goes on Hamilton City, where 80% of the money comes from. And I just want to see us actually defining the service that the customer needs. Don't see where we're doing that. Yeah.
So others can jump in. I may not answer all of the question, but the work here really began ahead of us adopting a new regional public transport plan in 2022. That plan was fully consulted with the public, and it supported the move that has been effectively the core of this review of our network, which is to move away from an access network, coverage network, through to a ridership network where we consolidate routes onto corridors and progressively move to a higher frequency network that we have seen from routes like the Meteor and the Comet is delivering what our customers are saying that they want. The journey between what we have today, which was based on contracts that were set in 2016 or so, and what the regional PT plan is saying, and then the network design that we have been undertaking for the last 2 years, is the evolution of that over time, all based on what customers are telling us that they want. Now, there will always be more opportunities to engage with more people and keep conversations going and look to deliver aspects of our customer experience roadmap and other key pieces of work, which is about how we engage with our customers and how we deliver a great service to our customers. But the journey that we're on now has been underway for 4 years at this point, and it's been through constant conversations with our communities all the way along. I don't know if others want to add more to that or not, just whether that answers the question.
Phil, you're aware that Tauranga, for example, ran those, the minibuses to hubs where they picked them up and took them into the city. I understand Hastings had done something, and I think Dunedin might have done something as well. Have we leant on their experiences and their knowledge that they gained from those trials, as I understand they were? Because that's the sort of thing which I think has got some merit. That way you can actually get people together, so you can actually put them on a bus, and when you're running a big bus around the place, you've got it half full rather than a driver.
Yeah.
So,
and those areas learnt a lot from the work we had already done on the Flex service, which we were running in advance of them even starting those trials. So we've learned from each other all the way along the road. Yeah. The other part of our on-demand is that in August, we talked about doing some work to look at whether on-demand would be a useful way of helping communities transition between coverage and ridership, and whether there was value in, for a period of time, offering services within local areas to get people to these nodes. And that work's made some good progress since August, which we can talk about if you like.
So if I can just respond, the Flex service, as I understand it, it's not what I'm talking about here. The Flex service is specific time frames at a particular time of the day when, and I think that's good. There's a need, and it's obviously well supported. And I'm talking about an extension of that in a different mode to cover other time periods during the day.
Yep.
And I don't see anything in here which is addressing that.
I can make a brief comment on the fleet sizes, essentially, and fleet choices, which is two-part, really. The first part is that we have been quite cautious on services. We do have a number of services in the region that don't operate with full-size large buses, and we have ensured that going into the new bus contracts that we don't automatically assume that we now need a bus, and many of those are not necessarily defaulting to a bus, and we are retaining smaller vehicles on services where the patronage doesn't warrant a larger vehicle. So we are being cautious in that instance. With regards to vehicle sizes during, throughout the day, typically we generally cater towards peak travel demand. Now, during peak mornings and peak afternoons, our buses are generally full at capacity, overflowing. We often need assist buses every now and again. And then during the midday or early mornings and late evenings, there is a typical drop in patronage, which is expected. The alternative to then have smaller vehicles run during those low demand times is that we essentially then need to operate 2 fleets running the same service, because we would still need larger vehicles running the peak demand to cater for capacity at that time. So it's not really operationally or cost effective to have 2 fleets running the same service, which is why at times you may see empty buses. Our data says otherwise. And again, I think it's also worth remembering that sometimes when you see a bus on the street, you're only seeing it for a portion of its whole journey. So the data doesn't really, back up the argument that we have empty buses running on the services, but the priority is the peak demand and making sure that we meet the capacity of our highest patronage.
I'll leave it there, thanks. I'm just.
Yeah, Chris, probably just to add some context to that as well. We have consulted previously on using smaller vehicles in geographic areas such as Rotatuna, Chartwell area. However, those things haven't quite come to pass with the delay of the Rotatuna rocket, etc. I think the next iteration of the regional public transport plan would give some opportunity as well for further consultation, which I understand is this triennium as well. My understanding as well is that transition time between going from coverage to more fast and frequent services is uncomfortable and hard to bridge the gap as well. So I think what you talk a lot of sense about that transition time, and I think we all want the same thing moving forward. It's just how we get there as well. Next up, I've got Ben.
Yeah, just briefly to begin with, to pick up that point that Chris is making, we are needing to make appointment of preferred bus operators by August 2026. But you're talking about the alignment with the RLTP and the government's NZTA funding, which is until 2027. So are we going to be signing up contracts that lock us in to a 10-year system that we can't then change? Question. If you want to.
I'll go first and you can finish off through the chair. In response, the procurement exercise that we're embarking on won't sort of take effect until November 27 for the first, regional contracts, and then July 28 for the Hamilton. Bearing all that in mind, it does allow us to incorporate the funding envelope that we will need to pitch to the agency for the next NLTP round, and as well, simultaneously, the long-term plan conversations that we'll be having, because they will fall over those periods of time. But what it enables us to do at this point, awarding in August, is properly understand what that envelope looks like. It is informed by what we've seen out in the marketplace, but as you know, you never quite know until we've been through that exercise. But
so there is some flexibility.
There is, and I guess the upshot of that is if it is not affordable, that's when you start reviewing level of service and how do you deliver within that envelope, if that makes sense.
That's fine. Yep. So the question I actually wanted to ask is about page 42, item 19, and that's the feedback from the bus operators contracted so far. So firstly, item A, units. I wasn't aware that we were looking at a 2-supplier solution, which would mean 2 depots and 2 separate fleets. That to me would significantly increase the cost. So is that something we're asking for when we go out for tender, when we they gave us that feedback, presumably there must have been a reason. So I just want to answer those one at a time.
Yeah, my understanding is that the two depots were along the lines of the Hamilton area is quite large. So if you've got buses returning, we're trying to lessen the dead run time for buses getting back to the depot. So one located on the eastern side, say at Ruakura, and the other up at Te Rapa would lessen that time of start-finish routes. So it's always sort of been two depots going, and especially as we move towards EV fleets, that would add resilience for charging, etc. But happy for staff to fill in any gaps.
We've gone out. We will presumably go out in the contract looking for two suppliers or two depots.
So you had asked us to try to make sure that we got the best commercial tension within the contracts. One of the ways that we have proposed to do that is to ensure that there is competition within the urban area. And in our proposals, which is what the market has been supplying feedback to us on, propose that in order to get a sense of what the suppliers thought about it. Feedback is what's in front of you. And the team will be able to, who were in that engagement process, will be able to tell you where that's come from. But the aim was to take forward your recommendation that we should be looking to get best value by ensuring that there was competition.
Okay, so that's fine. So second one was the zero emission buses. They actually want guidance on when we want the market transition to occur, which is the point we were making in the conversation, and you went out with them soonish, whenever you think. And so the feedback's coming back on that, because the costs of the EV. So they may be able to do diesel for some time, and then they want us to decide that. Now, I don't see that in the refined objectives for procurement on page 43. Price, they were looking at 9-year cost to separate capital and operational costs. The most important one, though, is number E, that identifying suitable land and development of depot for the EV would require significant barriers to entry. So again, those points that we raised, and the question was, did the council own the land or did the bus owner? So we were going out with the buses. So they've come back with a whole lot of assumptions there that I don't see necessarily in the refined objectives for procurement, which is what we have to sign off today.
Through you, Chair. So the staff is actually analysing all the feedback as we speak. So, and I guess with the EV sort of questions, I guess we did receive quite a bit of mixed feedback. So depending on whether you are incumbent or whether you're a new operator, they may have share quite different views around some of the challenges with regard to land or, I guess, EV depots. So I guess the team are actually working through and coming up with some recommendation around how we may address some of the concerns raised. So yeah, we'll provide a more detailed report around in terms of the pre-engagement feedback along with the staff recommendations. So that will probably come through in the next meeting.
Okay, but in the meantime, the refined objectives on item number 24, page 43, simply talk about transition to low carbon buses. Are you comfortable, Phil, that the objectives for procurement, which you want us to sign off on today, allow us to address, or staff to address, all those queries?
Yes, I think that will be something for council to consider, because I guess through the report, in terms of what council has adopted last year, that was the position that we will let market lead in terms of, or determine when or how this transition will occur. So that's what's been agreed based on the last council's resolutions.
And the market's coming back and saying, tell us what you want. So, thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Jennifer.
Okay. Thanks for that, Ben. Because I had those questions. Or some of them. Yeah, and on the land piece, I do want to ask again, Phil, like how much did we canvass potential out there? So I'm just mindful, our council hasn't met with Hamilton City Council, and last time it was Waipa Council that put up some land. And I'm just so mindful that last training, this stuff and serious decision making in August, quite at the end of the training, came to us when we admittedly didn't know that much about transport as a whole. And so I'm worried a little bit about how locked in we are with some things. And so just saying, is that land canvassing still happening, or have we pretty much put that to the side because of?
We've, as an organisation, I don't believe we've had any more of those conversations because council's direction was clear. The 17A though says that the whole of life cost would be lower if we were to be part of that journey. And that's where the difference in those views sits. The suppliers themselves have said in some cases, if they are incumbent, that there is no issue, and in other cases, land's expensive in an urban area and we do to help, which is what you'd expect them to say. So we have a position. We came to you in several times through early 2025 where we got clear direction, and we've put resolutions for you, and your support was based on the regional council having basically the smallest possible role and letting the market value by leading these things.
And what was the so they wanted more guidance on when EV transition. What does that mean? Can you give me some detail of the conversation and what type of thing that means? I'm not sure what kind of guidance to give at present.
I guess in terms of time frame of when council expected the transition to occur. So at this stage, our current planning was we won't specify any date as long as the transition is completed by the end of the contract, which is 2035.
Because it's largely dependent on what's logistically feasible, right?
Yep.
And so they have brought you that? What's
yes.
feasible?
And some of the operator express if they would like to see a more clearer in terms of indication around the timelines.
So if we know what those limited options are, and you gave us that detail, we could probably struggling to give feedback when it's high level.
Possibly, I guess, through the ZEB technical implementation plan with the scope out potential side, and there's some additional information that we can share as part of this tender.
Okay. I'm still really concerned that Hamilton City Council and us haven't. We've kept bringing up this need for a governance conference. Hasn't happened yet. So I think we might be going quite far down a path where 80% of the money is, for Hamilton City related large infrastructure decisions. We're not doing that. So let's really get on with that soon. The 17A review was really interesting. I did wonder as well, because it's going in the direction again of signalling a lot of things that the business improvement review several years ago had signaled. And I think there are a lot of people asking, there's talk about a Waikato transport and a CCO type thing. Where is that conversation sitting as well? And timelines of that, because I'm kind of wondering, does this council get up to speed with transport stuff and want to do something along the lines, but then suddenly we are so close to LTT, making any other and then it's just 3 years of no Waikato transport. So, and I'm not predetermined on whether we have one or not. I'm worried we're not having the conversation when it's been in the conversation of the transport people for a while.
So for those of you who aren't aware, there was a business improvement review undertaken at the request of council at the point that Chris formed the directorate in 2021. That identified a series of actions which we've been progressively working through, including things like regional rating and in the last triennium a future-proof PT subcommittee and other things. One of the last outstanding actions was to deliver a change to the transport operating model. And there were a series of options within that review as to whether it is a very small change right through to a national transport agency. In the last triennium, we did have a series of investment logic mapping sessions with members of that PT subcommittee to talk about whether there was problem within the future-proof area and a series of potential benefits of doing something differently. And the summation of those problems that were generated were around communication and around alignment of funding primarily. So that work was undertaken then, and we've then proceeded into this triennium where there is a very large local government reform program underway. We need to pick up where that work got us to and then start to form some views about what some of the options could be for both public transport and transport. And we're in the background starting to do that thinking, and that's something that we, whether it comes through to this committee or whether it's a conversation that you look to take out to things like the mayoral forum or other reform conversations, that's work really that's on my plate for this year, to be able to give you strong views and guidance in some of these options. So the obvious one that instantly comes to me every time is, when are the buses going to go to a territorial authority, as opposed to the model we currently have of legislated to operate them at a regional level? Whether multiple regions could work together around public transport, and whether that scales up in that direction, whether public transport and transport become part of one entity like Auckland Transport, then scales up and down based on a whole range of factors as well. But those are the types of conversations and things that we need to be bringing to you.
So what I'd be really interested in is having the business improvement review document emailed out to all the councillors so they can have a look back, because it's probably quite good to compare it to the 17A review and see some common themes. And then I'd be really interested in having all of those thoughts put into a report to receive at this committee, let's say, or but ideally this committee, just for information, so that the conversation and the knowledge starts. But otherwise, I just think we'll get busy with other things and it'll. And the last point I wanted to make was the complaints and suggestions that the community makes. I think I brought it up in the public transport subcommittee previously. It never quite got addressed in the way that I wanted it. And I don't want to go into the weeds, but I do want to know that our community, when they make a suggestion for a route change or that kind of thing, that we have oversight of that. So it kind of talks to the Raglan issue as well, because people come to councillors, whether they're here or in the district or city, and have ideas and things. And I'd like us to at least know how many complaints are we getting per month, how many suggestions are we getting, and is any of that getting resolved? Because currently I have 0.
Yeah, thanks, Jen, for that. There is some reference to the business improvement review within that on pages 168 to 170. However, yeah, that fulsome.
I'm just worried that the decision we made in August last year and the recommendations in this efficiency review are somewhat contradictory, and I hope that we can still be somewhat flexible with the options you bring to us, so that we are making the best decision overall as the new council each step of the way.
Yep, thanks for that. Chair Warren.
Warren's fine, by the way. You don't need a chair bit at the front. Yeah, look, I'm in support of what Chris Hughes brought up earlier. For me, the main driver of fare box recovery, we're sitting at 14.6 or 14.8, whatever it is passenger density. We seem to, in this report, they focused on service delivery, but not service efficiency. From what I can see, to Chris's point, Darren brought it up earlier, talking from Wellington. To me, it's bums on seats. And I've raised it before, but I'm really concerned that in our tendering process, we're not addressing potential operators that may help us improve that bums on seats. And if that's during the day and we're catering to peak times, morning and night, you know, where's the ability for an out of the box thinking operator to have input into, hey, we can do this better, quicker, faster, get more bums on seats. So to me, that's directly related back to fare box recovery. Page 86, we note it as an area of focus, but we don't seem to be focusing on it. So just to take that on board. With the infrastructure questions that we've gone out to the PTOs with, of course, they're going to tell us that regional council should own it all. It's just a gimmick. And perhaps my last one, Phil, is a bit of a comment around our Transport Directorate having quite a reliance on external contractors. And I'm just interested in a little bit of feedback in that space on, is it something that we're looking to address, or is it this is how it's going to be for a while now?
So those comments do appear in the document. There's a recommendation that the resourcing within the directorate be reviewed, and the staff feedback that's included as an attachment to the report indicates that that's what I've been undertaking during the last few months of 2025. We're a really small but really busy team. We have needed to refocus in order to ensure that we can have skills and experience in the areas that are critically important to us. And a combination of the adjustments to the structure focused on creating more leadership capacity, as well as a refocusing of roles to ensure that we have the right technical skills in the team, all about making sure that we get the absolute right balance with the use of internal resources and external resources. There will always need to be technical skills that we buy in within transport, because it's such a specialist area in many ways. But I really need and want, and we are looking to create a team that has the right skills for us as an organisation within the team. And that's all about minimising that use of contractors and consultants every day.
Okay, picking up on Jen's point, certainly think it's critical, and I'd like to see it as an action for this committee to hook up with Hamilton City. You know, they are a huge part of our transport thing. And also, I know we're getting to bus branding further down the track, but is that something that we're looking at in this contracting piece as well? Or are we going to silo it out and then all of a sudden got contracts that have been leased and now then we're rebranding buses and signage, and it just seems to be a disconnect.
So we've been really clear with the rebranding terms of reference and the project and the conversations that we had with you through the long-term plan that we needed to do that work now, so that when we have a new bus fleet operating, it is launched with that new brand in place. That's exactly why we're doing the work now, to be ready for that conversation, or that change to our brand and the way that we interact with our customers at the point where these new networks go live 2027 and 2020.
Thank you.
Keith.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Angela. In terms of the discussion we're having, we've had a fair bit of talk about the renewal or establishing contracts and bases and that sort of thing. But what concerns me, and it comes back to the point Tiba made earlier in the piece, and what Chris is saying, is all this discussion is fairly concentrated around Hamilton and Auckland and this population base here. We've got those outlying areas, and I've got to choose my words wisely, don't I, Warren? Because I have been accused of
Yes.
that are not getting serviced at all adequately. And I think what Chris raised is that we actually, and I'd like to put on record that we have a little unit within your team to think outside the square, to make sure that we provide essential services, but also provide the mobility that doesn't force the people to move out of the regional or the suburbs of our region and force them into the big cities. So we need to think smart on that. And my sort of leaving piece on that is we just need Uber buses. We need to think outside the square. And I can get things delivered to my door any time of the day for about $10 or something like that. And we have a courier service. Why can't we do the same? Courier services, courier buses. So let's have a real whiteboard thinking group get some solutions to service our outer areas. And if I pass the test now. Stop speaking. Okay, I'll stop.
You want to respond to that?
If we could, we have a more widespread and integrated network of bus routes across this region than most other regions have. Even big regions like Canterbury don't have the networks of services that we have across them. Won't go into any more detail on that, but Catherine, can I just ask you to touch on the short versus medium and longer term network options for areas outside Hamilton? Because Councillor, I think we've done a lot of work to understand what those communities want, and we've built that into the way that these contracts will grow over time.
Not for, obviously not for Raglan.
I'll first give some context to what the short term essentially is. We are quite constrained with short term opportunities because the networks are designed to be essentially within as close to existing budgets as possible, which is why most service enhancements are really earmarked for the medium term and then long term. We have been able to make some quite substantial, I think, changes to some of our regional locations in the short term. Karakia, TCDC and MPDC area is one example where we have had our Eastern Connector service, for example, start in Pairoa and commute through to Hamilton in the morning and then late afternoon. The Pairoa to Morant, well, to Te Aroa really section has had quite low patronage. The timing is really early and really late, and it hasn't really worked for the local communities. And we've heard quite strongly from Karakia District that they really want more PT in the area. And what we have been able to do from the consultation, we tested various options through our consultation of, okay, well, if we reduce the Eastern Connector service and remove the Pairoa leg, what can we do with this money instead? And where we've landed on in the short term is actually extending the Thames Connector service, which is a local circular service for the Thames town that does about 5 or 6 circular routes a day. That's reducing down to 3, and we're getting 2 return trips from Thames via Ngatea, Karapihi through to Pairoa. So quite a lot of improved coverage for Hauraki area and those communities to get to Thames in the short term within budget. So that's really great for that area. Another exciting one, I think, is the North Waikato Pokeno area. So we have our Northern Connector service, which goes from Hamilton, and there's an early morning service again that goes all the way through to Pukekohe, and an afternoon return trip at the end of the day. We have had a lot of feedback from communities in Mary and Te Kaupata and Mercer wanting improved coverage and connections to Pokeno and Pukekohe, both for medical appointments in Pukekohe, but also to access the South Auckland public transport connections. So what we've been able to do in the short term is terminate the Northern Connector. Instead of going all the way to Pukekohe, which is quite an expense, we're terminating that into Kaupata. And our local number 44 Pokeno to Pukekohe service, we're actually extending that to Kaupata at, I think there might be 5 return trips a day. I can't recall off the top of my head, but quite an improved access and transport choice for those communities along for the North Waikato. So there is still a Pukekohe to Hamilton transport option. It does now require a transfer into Kaupata, but for the Kaupata most Mary communities as well as Pokeno and Pukekohe, it's a very good improvement for there in the short term. So we are hopefully addressing a lot of community need in our outside of the MSP area locations. So yes, I hear you, but we are making meaningful steps.
Thank you, and Noel.
Thank you. I'm going to come at this differently. I am wondering, in my view, we're just doing the same old, and look, I appreciate some of those enhancements that you're talking about, but they're like, to me, band-aids as opposed to really thinking smartly. And I recall an exercise we went through when I was at the district and we were wanting to look at providing services. We looked at the population, distribution, and we decided long-term that we would sweat some assets and there might be congestion on sports parks or community halls and the likes, but the population was having a bubble and then it was going to fall away. And I saw this morning, I couldn't find it just now, but the New Zealand birth statistics haven't changed really since the 60s, 60,000 births in the 60s to about 57, I read this morning last year. So overall, our birth rate is not going up, but our obviously immigration is to get to where we are. But, you know, like sweating the assets, you know, just because a person wants to get on a bus at 7 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock in the morning to go to work, should we be doing all things to all people? I'm playing devil's advocate here, so I'll probably get shot by some of my constituents, but that's okay. That happens from time to time. The reality is, you know, like the peak, and this is going back to what Chris opened up with, and I think Warren touched on, are we just trying to cater for both ends of the day and seriously considering the downtime? Or whether we should be saying out there in the community, like Hamilton, putting in those bus stops in the middle of the road and holding up the rest of the world. Failing years ago to provide for decent traffic routes in from the northern suburbs, buses getting in the same lane as the traffic that's causing congestion. So it's a disincentive to get on public transport. Are we not being aggressive enough with our TAs to say, you need to change your behaviour and what you're providing for? You know, and unless we turn and actively work with the business community and saying you need to allow more flexibility in your workplace so that we don't have an hour, hour and a half in the morning where it's congested. We can spread that over 3 hours. You know, we've got to work smarter. And I don't think we are, and we're just doing the same old, same old. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Well, you raised some good points, Noel. Also about every school starting at similar times as well.
To roll over again for another 9 years, you know, we have sat around this table and I don't think we've been listened to. It's easy to do the same thing, it really is, and make some band-aids, but we are not confronting. And we have one last opportunity to do something really out there.
Gary.
2 quick questions. The discussions that we had when we were on the trip north with Andy Baker from Auckland Council about tapping into the Auckland Council Pukekohe orbiter that would open Tuakau, Pokeno, Mercer, Miramiri, TK, all the way right through. They made an offer and said, look, let's talk. Those buses start at 4 a.m. in the morning and they go till about 11 o'clock at night, and they are half hourly, hourly, whatever. They just continually go. So when you're talking of make a radical change, that would be a change, Noel. Next question. So is there any follow-up on that discussion with Andy Baker with Auckland Council? Second question is the cost of the high cost of the electric bus replacement is massive, and it's created a lot of stress. But page 40, 12A3, markedly transition to zero emission buses that requires full decarbonisation of the regional public transport fleet by 2035. Also, Andy brought up the trial that Auckland Council is doing with 2 hydrogen buses. And hydrogen buses and trucks are hitting the road now, which is a total alternative to electric, but it's far cheaper, which are similar to diesel buses, and it may be that diesel buses are able to be retrofitted. So when you're talking sweating assets, there may be a retrofit to be able to start running diesel buses on hydrogen. So the question is, has there been any follow-up and check with Auckland Council on how they're going on their hydrogen bus trial?
Phil.
So the answer to both questions is that we are working really closely with Auckland Transport, and we meet with them quarterly, and we are talking about all of these issues every time we meet. In the context of their regional public transport plan and the work we will do in future years on the future of our public transport network. Those are live conversations that we have. I'm trying to remember Andy's specific comments on the hydrogen bus. My memory of it was that they were doing okay as a trial, but there was still time to go before they really understood whether that was a viable part of their public transport network. The reference here doesn't specifically say electrification; it just says full decarbonisation, and that could still be in any case that the market is going to decide how this occurs rather than us. But that's still on the table if the market wants to lead it. I don't know if that answers the questions, Gary. You might.
Thank you. Liz.
I've been sitting here for a wee while, and I noticed I feel the frustration of this committee actually. I think everyone who's spoken has just got some form of frustration with it, and I'm not too sure that we're going to be able to resolve it in the next few months. I'm unsure really where to go from here, Warren, to be honest. We're sitting here on contract renewals, and probably a little bit of a silver lining is that we do have a regional transport committee with the regional councils, with the district councils coming up, TAs, in early March. And I think we just need to really emphasise the fact this is their chance. Contract renewals, this is the opportunity to change things. And some mayors who sit on that as well. So I'm hoping that we can maybe just put a bit of life into it. But this feels like death by report at the moment. That's all I'm seeing is report after report. And I'm not too sure that we're really getting the solutions we want. I'm sure Phil is just as frustrated by the remarks as well. So we went through a contract. We've already been through some contract renewals last year, and we found we weren't getting necessarily the number of tenderers that we were hopeful for either. And I don't want to be sitting here in the next few months and realise that we've got no opportunities, or there's no, there's no one tendering. Or we're not getting the price we want, or we can't find the land that we want, and all of those things have to align up. So there's frustration here. We need to sort it out. Not too sure we're going to get the results we want, and we're definitely not going to make the changes that we are all aspiring to by just doing the same old. So I'm just saying we need to shake this up somehow.
Thanks, Liz, for those thoughts. Just got a couple more people. Ben and then Gary.
Yeah, so I've just got 4, which I think are probably action points. So firstly, Catherine, thank you for that information on the Thames to Pyro and Pokeno Tikawata. These are questions we get asked a lot as councillors, but we don't get told the changes you're making. So action would be to let us know when you are doing the Thames Pyro thing so we can talk to Toby and he's happy. So, yeah, we don't know though. Yeah, is it? Okay. But any updates? So, second point is, in August, just before an election period, we were given all the information about how this process worked. We've got 5 new councillors now, I think. They may not be aware that the bill for the bus electrification, if we build the network, is up to $200 million. This is a huge cost coming down the track for us, and there's no government funding available, even though it was given to other regions. So could we recirculate that report from August to everyone so they're aware of what the costings were? 3, I think the point Jen's made is very important, that Hamilton City has to be involved, and I'd like to see when is Hamilton City going to get involved. Perhaps you can comment on that now, because or Liz can comment. It's like if we're going to have to find land for depots, then they need to be part of that conversation right now. Fourthly, Vincent has said you'll get feedback on updates to what the suppliers. Will that come to a workshop? Will it come back to us in a month's time? So because I'm just very aware the time frame of August 2026 is going to get by very fast. So thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
Do you want to comment on the the Hamilton City network linking?
Meeting with Hamilton City Councillors. Yep. That meeting has not yet been scheduled. However, given the feelings around the room and the urgency, then yeah, I feel it's upon us to connect with them. Other partners as well that we probably should connect with as well is Tainui. They're in significant land over in Ruakura. They don't want to sell, obviously, but the lease cost would be lower than us purchasing land. So obviously there's a real synergy there. And then also Well Networks with their electrical connectivity. Yeah, that's an obvious partner as well.
But just a final one, the report references section includes a link to the August Council report. Page 45.
We just get a
Yep, so we've now got about 3 things to email out, which is fine. All good. Gary.
Yeah, just thanks, Liz, for your comments, because I think you're spot on the money. It feels like we're a dog chasing our own tail to a large extent. What I would like also within this, when you look at all these contracts and stuff, Bill, we talk about a 14, I think about 14 more or less fare box recovery and things like that. If we went down the road of electrification, I'd really like to see the full cost and all that, because if we go through the land procurement, the powers, the charging stations, the new cost of the buses and everything else associated with that, either we're going to have to subsidise even more, so our recovery is going to be less, or the fee is going to go up an awful lot. And then, there's a lot of people who want a lot of things, and we can deliver everything to everybody if you want, but there's going to be a huge cost to it. And we need to start making some choices about what services we're going to provide for who and at what cost. And it's the same with so many of the decisions, and we just seem to try and do too many things. And so I really like, I think I support where Liz was going with it as much as anything else. We've got to nail down some decisions and stop just chasing our tail.
Yeah, probably just to put a little bit of fact around the fare box recovery, and the report, the last report, has it at close to 17% rather than 14%.
Correct, but that's not under a new cost model if we have new infrastructure in place, which would change that dramatically unless there's a fare increase.
Yeah, but if we can get the facts straight about the current fare box recovery as well.
Yeah, and there's a report coming to you as part of the annual plan process talking about what's required to achieve the next year's target as part of the annual plan. So you'll get that report in a couple of weeks. The bottom line here is that new buses were bought in 2016 to launch the contract that we have today. New buses will need to be bought to launch the next contract that we have. And whether they're a diesel bus or an electric bus, that's always been included within the cost of these contracts. The difference in price, well, firstly, you can't buy a diesel bus today anyway, but what we were being told by the market up until a few months ago was that the price of a diesel bus versus an electric bus was very small. Therefore, the impact across 9 years, based on the model that we have run to date and will run into these new contracts, is not likely to see a significant increase in cost. That's notwithstanding depots and electrification of all of those things, which you've been very clear are outside the scope of what you want us to tender, and you want the suppliers to do that. So the other half of the story is that the network review work that we have done over 4 years and the move to these ridership models is, as has been said already, all based on zero change to total cost of delivery. Our aim is to deliver a network that's improved with up-to-date vehicles within the budget envelope that we currently have. And we've been very clear on that for a couple of years as we've been going through all of this process. So that's been the basis upon which we've done everything to date. If you had said to us that you were comfortable that the costs of delivering public transport for the region could be significantly higher, the networks that we would have come to you with would have been very different from the ones that we've consulted on and brought to you in August. So this has been very clear to us all the way through.
Jen, did you have an?
Yeah, just a quick one. And look, I'm happy for that August stuff to be repeated because it's very clear in there that the total cost of life with EV is cheaper. So any delay, like even they said from Greater Wellington, delays and all sorts of things to moving to what is the future is just going to cost us more. But what I wanted to say was in back of what Liz said, I'm not surprised there's a lot of reports because we set this committee up, which was a means of education of the whole council. There's going to be that aspect, but I definitely also pick up on, you know, Chris's frustration, my frustration, a whole lot of people wanting to be innovative. And I know from experience of the last 2 terms that setting up a committee is a really good way of doing more BAU, but by the end of the training, the councillors are real good and we'd be doing some really cool things. But we don't, if we want to make change by halfway through the training, by the long-term plan, we need to do all the work up in the start. So I'm very favourable for something innovative. And I think, Keith, you kind of touched on it before, something like a work group. So say, whether it's a subset of this group or the whole group, I mean, 2 choices. You could have a couple of workshops that Angela could chair that would be a lot more free-flowing than a committee meeting and a lot more about deciding as a council what we want to achieve. Or you could have a work group that has a few staff members, a few councillors, you know, maybe 3 and 3 or 2 and 3, and just nut out what is the innovative thing that we want to do in transport and have it ready for long-term plan. So either or, but I'm signing up for either because I would love to at least try.
Thanks, Jen. Warren.
Thank you. If I could just remind councillors that a couple of things really. Basically, we've done a hell of a lot of consumer surveys and that sort of thing. There's some new services and altered services have fallen out of those. So we need to keep that in focus. Also, we need to understand that with the government GPS, there is no more money for anything new. The trial stuff we put up, all that sort of thing, that's gone. That's because we need that government subsidy to make public transport pay. So we've got to keep in mind that when we start to think about some of the comments that are coming back from communities, and I would say we need to articulate that to our communities as well. They need to understand that we are held by these constraints. What I would be looking today from you, Phil, is an understanding, picking up on Liz's point, that councillors are going to have confidence when you produce this procurement document that some of the comments about this bus procurement have been picked up and are in that document. So it's coming out in March by the look of it. So we're not going to get to see that. So I really need confidence somehow, and I need you to articulate that to this council or this committee, that the chair, the deputy, and maybe some councillors are over that, because I think that is the pinch point that we're feeling today. And I'd even throw the CE under the bus, really, in that comment as well.
So there is an amendment to the resolutions, which might be worth bringing up on the screen. So picking up on that thought, the chair can speak to it, but there's a suggestion made C to give you that confidence. Welcome. Pass to you, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Just my initial reading of the paper was that we needed something more along the lines of what happens in Stratton Pole to reflect the discussion that's happened in the committee meeting. So that is now reflected in the recommendation that has come to us, which is up on the screen. If we do need to move on, but this is now the resolution that's in front of us. We can take it point by point for people to have some comfort. So the only one that has changed, Jess, just help me out, is that we've lost one, but it has been incorporated. Maybe Dave, do you want to speak to it?
Let me see. We have a modified version of this. I know we've had some Discover issues this morning, so I'm not sure where that's gone. If you give me a moment, what we've got is a new, basically point C that essentially refers the documentation back to the director and committee chair for review prior to it being fired off, similar to what you see in strategy and policy. If you give me a moment, I'll just track down an email with that in and see if I can pop that on the screen for you.
Can I put a suggestion? Is this? Yeah, if we're going to follow the strategy and policy resolution, we'll just put the deputy chair in there as well. Oh, God.
All right, we're just making those changes. Right, should we take it in parts? Or are we happy to do the whole lot?
Okay, do you want me to run through this just for those of you that may not be able to see it? So the modified resolution that we've got is part 1, that the report be received. Part 2 is split into 5 parts, that the WRC Transport Committee, A, notes the feedback received from public transport operators through the pre-procurement engagement process undertaken over December 2025. This is in the report in your agenda between pages 39 and 45. B is noting the findings of the 17A review, and these attachments are in your agenda starting at pages 46 and 198 respectively. C is approving the objectives sought through the renewal of the contracts, and that is covered in attachment 3 at page 206 of your agenda. Section D is the one that I mentioned before that we've done a little bit of work on. Request that staff finalise the procurement documentation incorporating any changes discussed at the meeting with the documentation approved by the committee chair, Councillor Strange, and Director Regional Transport Connections, Fulking, prior to publishing requests for proposals in March 2026. This resolution is consistent with those that we see in strategy and policy, where we discuss documentation and submissions in the meetings, and then the committee chair, being Councillor Downard, and Director Tracy May, will push those on once they're happy with that they align with what was discussed. And part D, that we note that Part E just notes that the decision to award contracts is a decision that will be required of council in August 2026.
Thank you, Dave. Jess has got the changes adding in deputy chair. Chris Hughes. So the only one that has changed from the paper is D.
I've just got a question.
Yes, Ben.
So are we still going for the 2 supplier solution, or is that an option? I mean, is it, we're going to mandate you have to have 2 supplier? And the other question is, should we have something in here about discussion with Hamilton City about provision of land? We kind of open that discussion.
We could probably take that away as an action point rather than including it in the resolution, if you're comfortable with that. Yep. Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes, no.
I expect at the very least to be taken on a journey from here on in and not arrive in late August to find fait accompli. So it's better be workshopped, reported back to us, and we are deeply involved in understanding what this is all about. Well, obviously, yeah, I have strong reservations about the way in which this has all been done, because it's just the same old, which I won't dwell on it. So thank you.
Yeah, good points, Noel. We do have a number of meetings scheduled before then alongside workshops as well. Yeah, thank you.
Just we do that. I'd just like to make an observation that I think people need to read papers that were presented to us, because there is quite a lot of analysis done in there. Some of the issues that Gary's raised, some comfort there. You should go and have. Yes, I know you were, but I think we need to go back and look. So I'm suggesting that we have a summary, because when we first started down this road, correct me if I'm wrong, Phil, but we were talking, you were telling us that it was going to cost us 1.2 million per vehicle for electrification, and the equivalent for diesel was about 400,000. It was a major difference. Now I understand those two have come together. What I'd like to see is a very simple chart put together, giving the two options between diesel, and I know you'll say, well, diesel's not an option. It is an option in terms of comparison of cost, because that's what's setting our fare standards at the moment. People need to know what the fare costs are going to be on the same fare recovery basis with an electric system. The only way to do that is put on a sheet of paper where you're comparing the two side by side, like with like, looking forward for the next 10 years. What's that going to look like? And all costs, like depreciation, borrowing, whatever. So the councillors have a fair comparison to be able to identify this is what the likely impact's going to be. We can then go and talk to our constituents and say, this is what it's going to be, this is what the direction of travel is going to be over the next 10 years for bus fares. Do you support it? And that needs to be presented, I believe, to the Hamilton City as well. So I'm happy to second this motion, provided those I'd like to make those preconditions, if you like.
Yep, we've noted that, staff have noted that as an action. All right, we have a mover, we have a seconder. The resolution is up on the screen. All those in favour? Against? Carried.
No, and I'd like to abstain, and can I make a comment around that? And I got these papers at about 9 o'clock this morning, and I haven't had a chance to read through each of them properly and study them properly, and the document's so big we just couldn't download it out of Cambridge. And so if you're going to send us big reports like this that you want us to contribute on meaningfully, you either break it up into a couple of smaller pieces so I can actually get the information and read through it, or post it out to me. Thank you.
Noted. All right. We've got one more item and then we'll take a quick break. All right. Total mobility, Morris.
So just by way of introduction, councillors, introduce you to Maurice Flynn, who's our accessibility coordinator within the portfolio delivery team. He's here to present his report on the changes that government is proposing to make to total mobility.
Welcome, Morris. So for your reference, councillors, page 207 of your agenda.
Yeah, hi there, everyone. So yeah, those who have not met, yeah, Morris, Accessible Transport. So I coordinate our total mobility scheme for the region. I'll take the report as read, but I just want to highlight two main aspects of it that you need to be aware of is that, well, nationally, there's going to be some changes coming to total mobility this year. We are going to have a reduce in the maximum subsidy from what is currently 75% of each trip that people can receive down to 65. Along with that, we will have an up to reduce of our maximum cap fare for the region, a 10% reduce on that. We're not too sure what that is yet. We're not there yet. On par with that, MOT is currently running a review of total mobility. It's the very first one that's happened in quite a long time. So really interested in what's going to come from it. That has been coordinated, that's been worked on by MOT and Whaikaha, which is the Ministry of Disabled People that are leading that. So do I have any questions?
Warren.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, have we submitted a claim against that government $10 million yet?
Yeah, we have.
We have. So just waiting on an outcome and then potentially how they'll divide it up. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, not too sure what they'll be yet, but yeah, we have.
Yeah, and I notice the submissions that are going out around this aren't you don't have the ability to comment on the actual reduction in the funding, but improvements to services. So coming back to our original conversation around making sure that that gets out to our communities and that sort of thing. So it's a comms piece. So I hope that gets picked up and gets out to the organisations that obviously this affects, because it will.
Yeah. So we're working with our disability organisations that coordinate the scheme with us, do the assessing, and they're connected to the people that we need to target that need to be back on the scheme. Yeah.
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you.
And yeah, also our own communications as well. So we've got a bit of comms plan for once we're there with the number that we're going to have for the region, that we're going to share that out as well.
Cool. Jennifer.
Just a quick question. Why can you remind me, why is the total mobility scheme not in some of our like Otaronga, Waitomo?
Yeah. So part of the issue that what we're holding back on is because of these financial constraints. That's why I haven't targeted those lower areas yet. But once we're back and we've reduced the subsidy, that's going to give us long-term sustainability of the scheme where we can focus on making it region-wide. Okay. It's been every council, regional council, every region that coordinates it has put a bit of a hold on taking on new taxi providers, including us, just at this meantime. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. As there's no further questions, sorry, Chris. I couldn't see your light.
Can't see me.
No.
Point number 23. Can somebody please explain what's going on there and why? I think I know why. I just want to understand whether you've had the discussions and whether you've had the feedback. Yeah, funding caps. Lowering of fare caps and maximum subsidies.
Lorraine, just your mic, sorry.
Government is reducing the 25% top-up subsidy down to 15, but they're also directed NZTA to work with the regional councils to either lower the maximum subsidy or put a cap on the number of trips to further reduce the cost of the scheme by 10%. So depending on what the average trip price is, it doesn't just mean you can either just reduce the maximum subsidy by 10% and also there are equity issues of you just put a limit on the number of trips for all people as well.
I guess I'm wanting to understand what are the financial implications for us. We're going to be looking at annual plans next week, and we're going to be long-term plans are being developed. So I guess I'm trying to understand what you're telling us. I think what you're telling us that we're going to have to pay some more, but do we know what, how much, and if not, when?
No, the mechanisms that have been imposed and that we've been directed to work for and the total review is to stabilise it, to reduce the overall cost. Okay. And we're just a co-funder. So our costs should stabilise and may reduce. However, they have been out of control for some time. And the amount that we need to make changes, councillors have to be comfortable with. And then we also have to understand the elasticities. So because above the cap, the user can always pay the difference. And depending on how, how much they are prepared to pay above 65, from 65 to 75, will depend on how our part of the equation changes.
Thank you. So this is an efficiency effort, basically, by the government. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, Ben.
Two things. One, item 19, regional councils will continue to set the local maximum subsidy cap per trip while government's reducing it by 10%. Does that mean that this is an extra burden placed on us? And I noticed at the very end, staff will report to the council with the annual plan on the financial implications. So from what I heard just before, there are no financial implications, but there is a report coming to us at the annual plan.
So the government's not reducing the cap. The government is reducing the amount that it contributes towards the subsidised part of the cap. We set a cap. So probably the easiest way to look at it is if our fare, our cap was $50, then $12.50 is paid by government and $12.50 is paid by the user of that $50. And then of the $25 that is left, NZTA, not government, pays 60% and we pay 40%. That's what the bar is for it. So it's not as simple as if you change this 10% that you have reduced. We can reduce our maximum subsidised fare. We actually don't have a consistent one across the region. So we've got to understand what that means for saving the 10% that the government's directed us to do on top of their 10%. But it also has to be something that we are comfortable as a region is equitable for, transport. This is the most disadvantaged, transport disadvantage in our community. And we're required under law to give consideration to their needs.
Did suggest there has been a large increase in the use of this. So you'll have that in the annual report.
So just on that, an action from the council workshop on the annual plan in December was that we would bring something within the reports that are coming out for the meeting on the 25th of February on this topic. So that's that reference, and there'll be something in the report that we'll share with you on the 25th.
All right. Last question, Gary.
Just curious to know why for mobility we talk about a subsidy, and then for public transport we talk about fare box recovery, not a subsidy. So just by way of consistency, should we, if we talk about for mobility fare box recovery rather than a subsidy, to be fair to, or vice versa in public transport, instead of talking about fare box recovery, talk about subsidy? Why is there a difference?
Because we are working with NZTA and they use different language for the two things primarily.
Targeted rate. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Morris, for the work that you do in the space. And throughout my time here, I've watched the evolution, and yeah, you're doing some good work. All right. We are going to receive the report. Thanks, Liz. Thanks, Noel. All those in favour? Aye, against? Carried. All right, we're just going to take a quick 5-minute break and then come back for the last 2 items. So I'll be generous. I'll give you 6 minutes. So if we can be back at 35, that'd be great. Thanks.